Dan DeLu, our studio side effects supervisor, he was integral in keeping all the keeping the whole team together because there were other effects vendors working on the film as well, and Proof doing the previs. So, Dan was working very closely with the Proof guys, and they were in the office. And when I was down there covering the ILM stuff that we were working on, we were always looking at previs, talking about the models, talking about, for example, how Falcon flew, what the flight dynamics were, or even, the carriers, how do we sell their scale and size. So, I was always talking with Dan. Dan was always talking with Monty, the previs soup, and, we would get files, like early on we got files, we would look at the files and say, hey, what, anything we need to do differently or change. And it was just a collaborative process. We had a little bump in the road early on where we had a different scale size between our carriers, but it was, and which ultimately meant that they didn't fit in the river as originally conceived by the art department. So it meant that for all the shots, we had to split the Potomac River in half and move the DC side a little bit over to the east and move the Rosslyn, Virginia side over to the west. So, but once we sort of got through the growing pains and got all that stuff, we would get stuff in, we would do our conversions, or if there were problems, we would call those guys. It was a pretty seamless transition and handoff between the two. And like I said early on, we were going back and forth and getting their files early so we could start putting them into our pipeline, and then send things, hey, when you guys do this, could we get it this way or that way? And it was, and then the directors, editors, was very involved in the previs as well. So by the time it came to us, it was pretty well hashed out. So there were things where we would talk about, once we started simulating a lot of things like smoke, fire, water, the speeds of some of the carriers, they were a little too fast. So again, to show scale, we would slow them down, but we would always start with what the previous guys had done, and in most cases, it stayed pretty true to that. And then in some other instances, as the story evolved or the direction changed, we would just sort of run with that. Different directors use previs in different ways. Some directors, it's like the previs is the movie, and that's what you're after. Some directors use it as, well, this is more for timing and pacing, but this isn't really the shot. It's more just for feel, kind of, or to fill out the film as the edit moves along. In this case, the previs was very well, the directors had seen it, they were working with it, the editors had seen it, and they were using that to tell the story, because it's a very, the final battle is intercut, and you're following different the different characters, Falcon and Winter Soldier and Captain America, and so it was integral to how they put the movie together. And they had started the third act very early, which was good for them, good for editorial. It was good for everyone. It was good for us as well, because it meant that we knew, like, we could see the shots. We had got descriptions of the shots, but once you see them in previs, then that really brings it to life. Like, okay, this is like, these are big shots, and it actually immediately, we could see what was going on. The carriers were being ripped in half, so we could cue off of that and say, okay, we're going to need to put interiors on these things. We're going to need to work on the pyro. We're going to need to work on debris. And it gave us a good roadmap for the things that we really needed to focus on. And knowing that those were the big shots, we had a couple of those big shots in our Comic-Con trailer. And that was something that was, it was a blessing and it was a curse. It's like, oh my God, we've got to get these shots done for Comic-Con. So it was, a lot of really long hours and hard work put in to figure it out, and, in some cases brute force it through. And I think the result, the Comic-Con shot, was great, and it was equally great because it forced us to really figure out what the pain points on the film were going to be. Like, what are the things we need to focus on? Like, we thought, okay, great, we got this shot through, but here's what was really difficult about it, and here's what worked really well. Now let's take that. It was to have something like that happen so early on in the film was such a help to us. I can say that now after it's been delivered. Before that, I would say, "Oh my God, for Comic-Con, how are we going to get this done?" But again, the team just did a fantastic job. We had, when we initially got the previs, there were some shots where, and because it was building tension, it was an exciting sequence, it was action. There were some shots where we get them and say, "Oh, the carriers or the camera, it's just moving too fast." And one of the things we do is we bring it into our system and we plug it in and can track, okay, what's the camera speed? Oh, the camera's going 900 miles an hour. And just because the film needs to be grounded in reality, it was okay. Well, what are we filming that with? Are we filming that with the jet? Are we filming that with the? So we would try to rein back, and I think everyone was really happy with the previs and the composition of the shots, and there was and this is where I would say I would worry, because if the camera's moving too fast and the carriers are moving too fast, then there's something in your brain that says, well, it gives the scale away. It says that doesn't look right, and you'd have to make the argument. Well, we can make this look real. We can put good materials on it. We can make the explosions. We can make the smoke look real, but because the camera's moving so fast and the ships are moving fast, there's always going to be something that says, I don't know what it is about this shot. So that's where you'd have to go and say, I know we like the camera, but can we slow it down? And it's always a discussion and collaborative thing. So you'd say, okay, well, I'm not just going to tell them, I'm going to show them. I'm going to say, here's the camera that we had and the speed of the carriers. Now here's a couple alternates. Here we've slowed it down, and it'd be like, no, you've gone too far. That's too slow. We don't want that. And then we would just, okay, well, what about if we do this? What about we slow this down a little bit and we bring the camera around a little bit more? And then and sort of work that way to kind of everyone gets to the point that, the directors are happy and the studio's happy. But there was never, and again, Dan Delu, the studio side effects soup, he and I seem to always be pretty much on the same page. So, we could go back and forth and again, just, have good discussions about it, because everyone, at the end of the day, everyone wanted it to be, an epic, memorable, like, oh my God, this is like, I've never seen anything like this before. For me, the thing that gives me the most satisfaction is knowing how difficult the work was and how just how big of a show it was to pull off. That at the end of the day, and I hope this is true, and it's not just what I think it is, but at the end of the day, that people actually enjoyed working on the film. That people enjoyed working on the film, and that people actually enjoyed the film. That's always, that's a great thing, because for me, it's I want people to have a good time. I don't want it to be a stressful environment, which it can be a lot of times. It gets stressful, and it's long hours, and people are away from their family, but and you never know. Sometimes you do great effects on films that aren't necessarily the greatest films. But in this case, it was, I'm very proud of what the team was able to accomplish and the results on the screen. And I feel like the directors and the studio are happy with the work. And then the icing on the cake is when people see the movie and they just really enjoy it. I had always heard about FMX and how great of an event it was and how well treated everyone is. And I've seen some great talks. I'm having a really good time here at FMX.